Alright, what's up guys? Gonna do another one of these unedited track walkthroughs, mainly going over how I make my roller bases for roller D&B and how the overall vibe of this track was done. I'm doing the whole track, going over this whole track, and it's a little insight into how I made this track, which I considered a roller D&B tune. This is per someone's request. I forget your name, but I am gonna let you know once I upload this video. This is specifically for you, but for everyone as well. Uh, Specifically, this song is called Redacted, and it goes a little something like this. So yeah, I thought I would just, start from the beginning and go towards the end. And yeah, so the start, simple intro. This drum pattern pretty much remains the same throughout the whole track. If I open it, I think one thing I did though is, as you can see, the hi-hats are offset just ever so slightly to add a little more, not swing because it would be more exaggerated, but more like humanization a little bit, even though they hit the same the whole time. But that's besides the point. And then the other thing we have going on in this intro is this. This was a recorded Behringer Model D that I have, and it sounds like this. It's has an auto filter on it right now, so it's in lower frequency. But later on it opens up. Pretty cool. It's that analog warmth that I wanted to go for this track, so I added that. And then we have some FX, just down lifters. So one main thing about this track is that I kept it minimal. There's not a lot going on. The most that happens for complexity is probably in the basses, and that's not even complex itself. But anyways, so continuing on in this second part of the intro, we bring in a break, sampled break. Adds more rhythm and fun to the tune. Introduces more to it. And then a sampled pad. It's not quite opened yet. It opens as we progress towards the build. So with that, I just kind of drenched it in reverb. Added this, forget what plugin this is called. I haven't used it in a bit. Oh, the spectral resonator. That's what this is. Or no, sorry. Man, what is it? I think it's... Is it shifter? The preset is called delay here. Delay reso. Spectral time. There we go. That's what it's called. It's a very minimal effect. Doesn't do too much. And then of course reverb, all that. And this is being played on D3 and its octave. Yep. And then progressing into the build. Drop the drums, introduce the vocal. Keep it like this with the pad. And also we introduce this 808 bass, made in Serum. Pretty cool bass, I really like it. It's very vibey, especially the notes I chose. Another thing is this tune wasn't like forced to a key necessarily. Since it's not necessarily too melodic, the only melodic piece we have going on is the pad and the Behringer Model D. and those typically are stagnant and don't do any crazy melodies. So I was able to get away with more using random notes, such as this one. So this goes from a D to a G sharp to a D sharp, which I think, if I'm correct, could be the Phrygian dominant mode. Not gonna really check though. But anyways, this is used using a envelope 2 to the pitch of a single oscillator of analog BD sine with noise on and some distortion. And if there's any other effects, which there's not, there's just the sidechain and then the auto filter that's controlling it, fading it. Yep. This vocals from Splice. I just get vocals from Splice. I do want to start working with vocalists, but I don't know any. But that's besides the point. We're talking about this vocal specifically. It fits the vibe of this tune really well. I like to think that this tune is like a nighttime driving tune, whatnot. Minimal effects on this too. Everything has minimal effects, except maybe the basses. We'll run through those, but yeah. And then the Behringer Model D starts modulating, bring in the high end every now and again. Bring in that movement, basically. And then we have a riser here. And also, I believe we should, yep, we're doing modulation of a auto filter and a reverb on the build, which is only on during the build, so that, because sometimes auto filters kind of work similar to EQs, and if you have this small high cut, it will actually kind of make your tune sound different, oddly enough. I don't know the science behind it, but I just know it happens and I don't like it, so I make sure to turn it off at the drop and before the drop, just the build only. But yep, it's kind of like a what's that plugin by Dotto Life called Endless Smile, but homebrew. But yeah, so I'm gonna play it and I move into the drop, the first drop that is. So to go with that, we bring back in the drums, same pattern. And then we do a different thing with the vocal. This vocal specifically has stereo flyby. So it's the same chain, just stereo flyby. So I just get the first part of each section of the vocal and add the stereo flyby, which without it sounds like it's got that reverb and everything. But if we add stereo flyby, it has these little resonance, which is pretty cool. Just a little ear candy piece, if you would like to call that. And the down filter, her lifters, and yeah, but of course, drum and bass, so we introduce all the basses. I really like how the vibe of these basses turned out, specifically the sine bass, and I'll specifically say why when we get to the second part of this drop. But so there's no like crazy rhythms going on or whatever. It's just like you have this turn, you have this turn, you have this turn, and you have this turn among the basses. But the underlying sub just going the whole time. But yeah, so this first bass, the sine bass, is I think the main star of the bass line. So to show you what's going on, it's very minimal design in here too. Everything's minimal, I swear. When it comes to nice vibey roller drum and bass that I imagine driving, it's gotta be minimal. But yeah, So we have the Juno, which I think is digital, if I'm correct. Nope, analog. It's got to be analog then. Yep. And a sine wave. When it comes to making these bases, I've found that using more analog or digital, not a lot of wavetables, sorry, works. I mean, it can work. I just prefer these. It's got slight FM, this MG low 12, which I believe is oh no, it's not. We actually use an auto filter to do a lot of this movement later on. And then another thing that comes with a lot of these bases is using Sine Shaper. But yet again, pretty simple bass, a little bit of noise, and that sounds like that. And then we have a really not huge fog bass or foghorn bass. If you actually, let's go back real quick. The processing on this bass specifically. So that's all it sounds like about the processing. But then the Redux brings in this bit crushed high end, pretty cool, and then OTT enhance it more. But this is the part where we bring it back to that minimal side of things by adding an auto filter that we modulate throughout the tune with these shapes, and later on more. And then we add a reverb. A lot of these basses are going to have reverb, but very short reverb. It's just going to be mainly for when it's playing. It has that width, but still mono. But yeah. Alright, anyways, sorry. Back to the foghorn bass. We use this to do low 12. It's, again, very simple analog, however you want to call it, analog shapes. Sine wave and sawtooth at a +3, and then at FMs, put the volume down. Coarse pitch being slightly modulated, and yet again, this has Sine Shaper. Sine Shaper is used a lot in these basses for this tune specifically. Take out all the effects. Sorry, gotta wait for that to leave. Okay, cool. So then we add the amp, a little bit more distortion, OTT. But like the last bass, since we introduced all this high end, that doesn't necessarily sound that good with the tune if I play it. I bring back the auto filter, which is modulated. And then add reverb again for that bass. And then just some simple EQing, take out the low end for the sine to show up and all that. Next bass. So this one's a little more complex. Oh wait, actually, sorry, let's turn this back on. If I open this back up. So the weird thing with this one, sorry, my nose is killing me. With these LFO shapes controlling different things. So this one's controlling the wavetable of oscillator 1, which is an actual wavetable this time. And then this is controlling the level of it. But as you can see, this is a triplet, and this is like an eighth note, so it adds this weird movement. Rather, if I just did this, I found that this kind of fits the rhythm and vibe of the drop I was going for. Have a high pass here with somewhat added resonance. The FM's at like 54% using ms.aw and then the octave up. And I also messed with the fine tuning a little bit, because if you take that out, it sounds like that. But then you bring back in this change in the fine tuning. It kind of makes it more wide in a way, but it just makes it sound more interesting and not as static. And then again, classic. Um, right here we have the sine shaper distortion, and the this this low 6 MG low 6 with a lower or cutoff set pretty high. Without it, it's like that. With it, like that. And then going into the effects, add OTT to bring out the high end. Now, if I'm correct, we don't actually cut out the high end in this one. 3 EQ3s, this kind of simulates kilohertz disperser, that plugin, and how that works. If you know what that is, you would understand what I'm basically getting at, is that it simulates that and what that effect is. It's pretty nice. And an auto pan, pretty quick. It's a triplet as well, 3 out of 16, with not crazy panning. To add to that movement, not make it static, and of course a high cut. And then we have this bass. It's like a Predator from the movie Predator, that I like to think of like the clicking part where it's doing that weird sound. Again, like the last bass, it does the whole one part's a triplet and one part's not. Basic MC B, IO. The FM is being modulated with the not triplet, and then the triplet's doing the level. You got sine shaper, OTT compressor, and multiband, but acts as OTT in the software, and it has its own reverb in the software as well. Serum, to be exact. This is also doing the cutoff, and yeah. So there's also some more editing. There's a automation of the pitch bend, which is only set to 2 semitones up and 2 semitones down. Add more interest to it. And then if I were to take the effects off, sounds like that. Still pretty cool, but some dust. And then use OTT to enhance that. And then take out the low end like this. And yeah, so those bases are mainly covered, and then we have one more. This one. So this one's pretty cool because it actually has a good amount of reverb on it that makes it stand out more. This has FM being taken from saw, that's 4 octaves up, pretty high. This actually has 2 distortion as well, and then a high cut here. So one thing to note for this one is this is actually being, wrong bass. This is, these automations of like the cutoffs are being done in Ableton rather than using LFO. I could have used LFO, but I use this anyways. This bass is pretty simple, but I wanted like a high screech scraping bass, and that's how I got that. So yeah. And then moving on to the second part of this drop, really cool, is this sine bass gets to stand out more by sounding like this. So I added more notes, I believe. Yeah, it's using similar to that 808 pattern. It uses G sharp, D sharp, and D as the notes it uses. And in this part, I use the auto filter to make it stand out more in movement. And yeah, that's pretty much the change in the second part, is adding that in, and then also we bring the drum break back in, and we bring back in the pad and later the model D-ARP to transfer into the second build or break. And the sub bass starts following the new pattern with that new introduced note. So to go back. Cool. So moving back in. Third part of the drop, if you would, just bringing back those melodic elements, and also having the bass in that 808 bass. It's a vibe. And no more of the drop basses. But then we move back into here. So this build actually utilizes the 808 bass still. Pretty cool. Of course, one problem with having bass in your build is that it kind of takes away from the impact. However, that's counteracted by the whole reverb and auto filter on the master being modulated to go up, because as you progress in it, that sub's going away, so it's like, oh, where's the bass? Oh, but then we bring it back in, of course, the second drop, which sounds like cool. So sine bass does just this now. It's pretty quick. It's a quick stab. And I don't think this was shown in the last drop, but we have a little subwoob. Sine oscillator with another sine oscillator, 4 octaves up, with the FM being modulated and the cutoff by envelope 2 with a shape like this, shark fin. And oh, will you look at that? Another sine shaper distortion. With reverb and EQ. Then we bring back in the foghorn, and then this is where we introduce this bass. It's got a simple wavetable with the sine oscillator 4 octaves up and 7 semitones up, because if we the 7 just adds a new tone. It's a pretty cool thing to do with your basses. It works sometimes, doesn't work some other times, but I recommend trying it. We have a reverb filter that is, the mix is being modulated by LFO1, or I mean sorry, LFO3, and sine shaper distortion, of course, and some compressor OTT in-house. And this modulates the cutoff of this low pass filter, which I control the rate, and it's not set to straight notes, it's set to hertz. Makes it a little more crazy. One thing to consider when you're doing this type of modulation, you might want to find a position for that rate where you want the bass to end to make most sense, which I did with this one. And then start from being really high up. So yeah, that's how that bass is. Pretty cool. Then this pattern of these basses remain the same while these basses do their thing. This next bass, I just resampled one of my hardstyle kicks and messed around with it, see what funny stuff I could do. This is what it sounds like without all the effects. I also did a rhythm by like chopping it up. This is the tail of a hardstyle kick, not the talk. But yeah, pretty cool. I added redux, OTT, some mudslide. I really wanted to mess around with Ableton's effects more in this song, so I kind of did. This one's kind of interesting. Just basically messes with the sound more to get a more unique result, and then add a reverb, and then EQ. this bass is pretty minimal, but I mainly wanted to get that high-end Redux type sound. Pretty cool. And that covers those basses pretty much. This song is really simple, not gonna lie. It's got the same vocal, it's got the same effects as the other song, and I believe the quote-unquote second part of the second drop is back to the same melodic part, just like this part. And the song ends with that Model D melodic harp. I had a lot of fun making the song, and it releases, or was released, along with a song I really enjoyed making called Break the Earth. It's like a hardstyle mixed with industrial hardcore song, which uses a vocal that I kept on trying to figure out where I could use it, and that song turned out to be the best option. I don't use any of the return channels of this. This is what the yes, this is what the master chain looked like. It's just this being boosted. Very minimal effects. And then of course this is our sidechain trigger channel. I guess this is the last thing I can go over. Octave doesn't matter necessarily. It sounds crazy where it's at right now, but that triggers all the sidechain for each and every channel. I guess actually if I go over here, we have a little bit of compression going on for the basses to bring them together. Yeah. I guess another last thing I can go over is there's actually some effects on the Behringer Model D. Let's turn off all the effects so I could run over it real quick. So this is what the raw recording sounds like. Add OTT, add delay, and then add some reverb. And then this is the auto filter, and then a high cut on the sound. But yeah. I hope this helps, one, the individual that asked for this, and two, people in general. I saw the reception for the neuro-bass tutorial, which went over my song Take My Life, which is my most released and or most recent release, and I thought, you know what, maybe go over a few more of my songs. And yeah, this one was requested, and I wanted to actually do it for that person. I typically am really good about doing requested videos, tutorials, and whatnot. But yeah, hope it's helpful and hope you learned something. If you liked this video, leave comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. I'm almost at 300, which is really cool. But yeah, peace.